As an adjunct to my last video on the upcoming decade, my very optimistic last video, I'd just like to make a couple of cautionary comments so we put this all in perspective. Now, the first thing I would like to say is that those who do not learn history are doomed to repeat it. It's a well-known cliche, but very true, as many cliches are. Just a bit of background, the Luddites were British workers who staged protests during the Industrial Revolution. In the early 19th century, machinery began to replace hand production, water and steam power began to improve, and the factory system became implemented. Modernisation of civilization took great strides, but not everyone were winners. Luddites were textile workers during the Industrial Revolution in Great Britain. They protested the introduction of machines that threatened to make their jobs obsolete. Unemployment, a food shortage and a prolonged war against France had many of the British working class on edge as the 19th century began. It was a bad time for skilled workers to see their wages drop and work hours decrease. Unfortunately for stockingers in Nottinghamshire in 1811, that is what happened. The stockingers' job was to make stockings using a knitting machine called a stocking frame. However, it was the Industrial Revolution and new technology had arrived that could make stockings faster and more cheaply. New wide frame machines could do the work of 5 stockingers. Not only that, the wide frames could be operated by unskilled apprentices who worked for less money. However, stockingers insisted that faster and cheaper was not necessarily better because the quality of stockings made on the new frames was very poor. The first organised protest against the new technology took place in Nottinghamshire on March 11, 1811. Meanwhile, another protest was happening in a village not far away. Soon protests began to occur all across northern England. Occasionally fires were set to factories, but in most cases the protesters targeted only the machines. In Yorkshire, large sledgehammers named Great Enoch were used to smash several machines. The nickname Great Enoch came from the blacksmith who made both the sledgehammers and the wide frames. Some of the protesters did become violent. In April 1811, in an incident near Manchester, a mill owner instructed his men to shoot into a crowd of 2,000 protesters. 3 protesters were killed, 18 were wounded, and British troops killed 5 additional protesters the next day. A primary focus of the British government's efforts to end the protests was on capturing the alleged leader of the protest movement, Ned Ludd. Some called him Ned Ludd, others referred to him as King Ludd or Captain Ludd. He was seen at the protest in Nottinghamshire in November 1811 and blamed for organising the protests across the region. Now, why the Luddites were wrong, in the long run that is. The Luddites prevented creative destruction. Creative destruction is the process of industrial mutation that incessantly revolutionises the economic structure from within, incessantly destroying the old one, incessantly creating a new one. Economists who adopt this succinct summary of the free market's ceaseless churning echo capitalism's critics in acknowledging that lost jobs, ruined companies and vanishing industries are inherent parts of the growth system. The saving grace comes from recognising the good that comes from the turmoil. Over time, societies that allow creative destruction to operate grow more productive and richer. Their citizens see the benefits of new and better products, shorter work weeks, better jobs and higher living standards. Which brings us on to one Elon Musk. CEO Elon Musk has bragged to customers and prospective buyers that Teslas, unlike other makes and models, will appreciate in value as they age, thanks to full self-driving hardware and software updates that has promised to deliver by the end of 2020. In July, he tweeted that these self-driving Teslas should be worth between $100,000 and $200,000. Musk's logic is that a Tesla would increase in value as it ages because of these rolling enhancements and the ability for the self-driving car to operate as a robo-taxi, generating income for its owner on a ride-sharing network. All right, as in many things in life, for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction, and unfortunately there is negative consequences of the self-driving technology that Elon Musk is developing with Tesla vehicles. It's not going to be so much when it comes to normal sedans that the issue is going to be profound. It's going to be in the areas of semi-trailers, because potentially this technology will actually put nearly every truck driver in the US out of business in the foreseeable future. Could be by the end of the decade that this is just a job that's listed in the history books. And do you know how many people are employed in that one industry right now? I'll flash the details up on screen. I think you'll be surprised. Yep, that many. And I'll tell you what, that's going to have a huge consequence if the Elon Musk's self-driving technology is as viable as he says it is. A lot of these miles are actually spent on interstate freeways, for instance, and that's the first area where the self-driving technology will be perfected, because it's quite a controlled environment. There are certain advantages to having robo fleets of trucks travelling down the highways. One is there's a slipstream effect. So if you have a convoy of trucks, you actually will have fuel savings that take place because of that. Of course, the fuel situation won't be as crucial, because it does appear as if we are transitioning to all electric vehicles in the near future, maybe next 10, 20 years, I would think. That the internal combustion engine may be a museum piece or a specialist item that's not taken up by the masses. But the disruption that this is going to cause, that's why I started this video with a history of the Luddites, that history does tend to repeat itself. I don't think that the disruption is going to be as bad as in that case, because we do have a social welfare net now. We're a much richer society and can cope with this level of disruption better. But it's going to be tough for these people. If they can't be re-skilled, then they are going to be sitting on their asses, and it's the brunt of it will be felt by males. It's basically a male-dominated profession or job. I don't know if you call it profession, but it's certainly, there is some level of skill there, and that's going to be basically lost as an income-producing asset. So 3.5 million, if they all go, it's going to have ramifications politically, socially. It's quite a game changer. But I support it. I think creative destruction is important in the long term for the good of society. We are better off long term, but there are growing pains always. And the thing about living in a free market society is you need to be nimble. You need to be able to change. And some people have that are more able to adapt than others, and so it will be much easier for some people to transition from driving a truck to something else. But in the case of taxis, I was quite surprised when I checked out the number of people who were employed in that industry, and here are the figures here. You can see that it's only a fraction of people employed as truck drivers. That's where the greatest disruption will take place, and that's where it will take place first, because the off-highway, off-freeway travel is more complicated. It's going to take longer for the self-driving technology to get on top of that. It may happen faster than I think. I mean, Elon Musk is an optimist. He sets very aggressive timetables, and he's looking at the end of 2020 for his self-driving technology to be mature. Now, I don't know about that. It is improving incrementally, and if you watch There are people who are driving around in their Teslas testing out every software update. This is all very new. He is the great disruptor when it comes to technology. Elon Musk has created a car company which is really a hybrid between a software company and a car company, and because of that, what he's doing is he's actually now created a car company that it keeps enhancing the product all the time with software updates. It's the same as your computer. It's the same as getting updates there. He doesn't make a differentiation between that and the car. The car is the same as far as he's concerned, especially with the self-driving software, which is continually being enhanced, and will probably never stop being enhanced, because there's always going to be those aberrant situations where you're going to need more information. I mean, it's going to be able to cover 99% of what will occur to a driver in the foreseeable future, but there's always some things that come out of left field. And but I do believe that self-driving will be a much safer and more economical way of moving goods around in the future, and the future is coming much faster than you might think. So this is a real issue, and I didn't mention it in the last video because I am optimistic overall about these new technologies. They will be good for society, but it'd be stupid of me not to mention that there are going to be major disruptions which are going to affect individuals quite dramatically. But I think that the roads will be safer, and they will be moving goods will be cheaper as a consequence of these actions. So I think it is good overall. But of course, in the case of SpaceX, one of his other companies, well, we're looking at a mob such as Boeing, who has been working on the SLS, which is a really expensive rocket to great capabilities, but it's a throwaway rocket that could cost $1 billion per launch, something incredible like that. Just absurd amounts of money, and it's costing multiple billions to develop, and it's way behind time, and Boeing just has no incentive to get the job done quickly the way the contracts have been set up, and I think that is ridiculous. It's more a political decision rather than a good economic microeconomic decision. Whereas Tesla always try to cut costs in what they do. Both Bezos and Tesla are running, trying to run best practice, but people like Boeing, from what I can see, are just milking the system. I mean, they're providing technology, sure, they are doing that, but they're lining their pockets at the same time. Whereas I think that Tesla are going to make money. Elon Musk will make money out of Tesla. He's going to make money out of SpaceX, but he is focused on developing the technology and cutting costs. And I think that's the area where Boeing is losing the plot. And they've had it too good to be for too long. And it's not just Boeing. It's not fair to just single out one company. There's been a number of companies that have done very well out of these government contracts, and I think there's time for major reform. And I have a feeling that NASA in the future will be moving away from that model. They are pumping money into the likes of SpaceX, and I think that's great. And also Jeff Bezos is also... Blue Origin is getting money as well from NASA for the moon lander. So that's good. I think that's the way to go. That is the future. I think it will be shown to be the future. And I think the likes of Bigelow, who are building these inflatable modules that can be also placed on the moon and Mars, is again another future big player in space manufacturing. So look, mainly it's going to be good news, but as I say, to be fair, to be balanced, I need to also mention that there will be losers. There's always losers in a dynamic free market economy, and as I say, the people that can adapt are going to do best. Ones who can't will be given government assistance. Will it be enough? I don't know. I mean, jobs, as Tim Poole said in his podcast recently, he said it's not just about making money having a job, it's about self-esteem, about identification of you as a human, your self-worth and what have you. People need to do stuff. They don't want to be just sitting around on their asses and watching TV all day. They do want to have something they can say, well, look, I've been a productive member of society. That is a need. And they usually identify themselves by their jobs. That's why people, when they retire, they don't have that identification anymore, and it can be hard for some people. So that's basically why I've thrown all this economics down your throat. And I do believe history is important, and since I've been on the internet and doing these YouTube videos, I have a greater appreciation of history than before. There's a war historian called Tik. I'd recommend his videos. They're very good. He's also getting into politics and history, which I find interesting too. I actually agree with a lot of what he says, even though it can be seen as controversial. So I think he's worth checking out. Of course, Victor Davis Hansen is a great historian. I love his work as well, and he's also a military historian, but he's gone through more of the standard sort of academic route at universities, as opposed to Tik, who's actually more of an online creation, which is interesting. And I think that the Tiks of this world will be the future when it comes to academic pursuits. It's accessible to anybody who's prepared to do the source work and go and check through the details, and they want to do the study into history and go and check out the source material and provide their own take. I think that's great. Why not? I think that we're going to see a real change with the way education is set up in the future, and I didn't point at that. Oh, the other thing I didn't mention too is that Elon Musk has also got the Boring Company. I mean, he's got so many fingers in. He's got his finger in so many pies, I should say, that it's hard to keep up with him. But his solar panel business, and that's another thing too. He's got the Boring Company. The idea is to do tunneling at a fraction of the cost, and of course that same technology can be used on the moon, so maybe linked moon bases, and Mars as well, because you need to be away from the radiation and also provide a transport network. So I don't think he'd be able to transport the actual boring machines in his spacecraft. The idea would be to manufacture them off-world, because then you get outside Earth's gravity well. But the other area that Musk is doing very well at, he's come up with solar cells that actually are shingles on the roof. They actually double up as the actual tiles. So aesthetically they look like tiles, but they do provide solar power. So that's another area where he's doing well. So he's having a very good time at the moment. It seems like all these technologies are coming together this year. Oh, and there's one last thing I need to mention to you, which I only heard about the other day. There is going to be a presentation about his battery technology. Again, I think it's going to be in late February, March, and the rumour is that what might happen is he may announce that he's come up with a 1.4 million, was it kilometre or mile, capacity battery. I think it might be miles, because they're talking in US terms, and that is a huge game changer. I mean, basically, you may have a battery for life. It means that you won't have to change the batteries in your vehicles for a long time, which again reduces their maintenance cost quite substantially. But also, because Maxwell Technologies, which is that battery company that he's bought out, they're doing some very exciting things with battery technology. So I'm assuming that not only will we be told about this incredibly long life battery, but also one with a much greater energy density, which is the other thing that we're all pushing for. So very exciting things happening. So I don't want to finish this video on a downer. It's all good. It's just that there are going to be growing pains, and some people will be the victims of this, and they need to be considered before it actually takes place. I think governments need to be well aware that this could be just around the corner with a huge disruption in employment. Anyway, hope 2020 is going well for you so far. We haven't had much of it, but I've stayed reasonably sober, so that's a major achievement in itself. So, but that may be broken slightly tonight. But we'll see. It's hard for me to avoid the bars in Saigon. It's cheap beer can be a killer in conjunction with warm weather and cute bar girls, of course. So anyway, I hope I haven't bored the pants off you with all this academic stuff today, but I sort of like it, but you know, I don't expect everybody else to get off on it, but I still think it's very important to know these things. So hopefully I've enlightened you. Please consider subscribing to my channel if you think there's anything there of use to you, or entertainment or whatever. And either do that or give me a thumbs up, or if you're feeling really energetic, do both. That'd be great. But please don't ignore me. That's the worst thing you can do on YouTube, is be ignored.